All right. So the Zoom is connecting. Yes, now it is done. Okay, good. We are live now. And in today's session, we are going to be discussing templates in Django. I know the last time I mentioned that we have two main things to discuss, which is templates and models. And I realized that there are a lot of things to learn. I can rush through both of them and finish them today, but it wouldn't make sense. And the essence of having these streams is to make sure that everyone who is participating live really understands what is happening and gets value for being here. So I'm going to spend the next couple of hours that we're going to be here going through templates and the Django templating language. So that's the focus for today, and it's a lot. In fact, if you really want to understand it and be able to use it in complex projects, there's a lot of things that will you need to know. And I'm going to take my time to break them down as much as possible. So from the last session that we held, we talked about URLs and views. And for anybody who will be joining later or you're joining for the first time, you haven't seen any of the previous ones, for the very start, you may be a bit lost, but then what I will encourage is that if you are watching this right now, just focus on understanding the current thing that we are talking about and not the references we make to the previous ones that we've done. And after the stream, you can always go back and watch the previous one. So we are going to share the playlist with all of you. I mean, I've created a playlist for the series so you can always look at that and catch up on the previous sessions. But let's focus on today. So this is what we had from last time. Maybe I should activate my virtual environment so that we can get started with it. We went in Django lesson 2 directory, and hopefully I'll be pushing everything to GitHub so you get to see the code from there. Oh no, I wanted to go into lesson 2, cd Django lesson 2. All right. And in here, since I've created two different projects here, we can get into the my env, not my company, my env. All right, then scripts, then activate. So now we've activated our virtual environment. Let's see what we can do.
Doc, please, I have a question, please.
Sure, go ahead.
On the previous code that you wrote,
Yeah.
you see, you selected the Django lesson 2.
Mm-hmm.
So do we still have to reference when we are trying to activate our virtual environment? Do we still have to reference the Django lesson 2 before we go into the script, and then inside the script we activate it? Because
Yeah.
I think I saw you entering into the main directory and then going into, like, you didn't
Yeah.
start. But you referenced the Django lesson 2, then you came to the script, and then, but meanwhile, you've already entered the Django lesson 2 already.
Okay. So what's happening here right now is when I was creating this project, I didn't have a singular directory called Django. I just created it and I've brought in Django lesson 1, Django lesson 2, and each of them within it has a virtual environment. So Django lesson 1 is a directory that has a project within and has a virtual environment called env. Then Django lesson 2 as well has is a directory that has a project within it, has a virtual environment called my env. So all that I did was to get into this particular directory, that's the Django directory, but then I'm interested in the virtual environment within the Django lesson 2. So I had to cd into that. As soon as I went into that, the next thing I did was to try accessing the virtual environment itself. In this case, it is called my env. So I did slash dot slash my env. So that's what I did. Then I went to script because within this directory there is script, then activate. So that's what I did by that's how I got to activate the environment. I hope it's clear. So
Yes,
ideally
please.
we could have had just one single project, one single directory for all the projects that we are going to be creating. But I didn't think, see, this whole series is coming off the fly. Like it's not like I pre-planned it and I knew exactly what I was going to be building in the series. No, as we jump in here, things happen, I create things. So I didn't think about it, but now I've decided to put them in one directory so that we can push everything to GitHub and you all can have access to the code. Yeah. All right. So let's get started. I think I would want to launch the site that we created, illustrate what we did. In fact, maybe we should go straight to the points, but let me launch it. Let's say to start the app or the server, we call Python manage.py and the command is run server. So let's see. All right, this is up. This is up. So this is what we had from the last time. We have our home page, then we can go to about, we can go to services, we can go to contacts. That's what we created. Then the last thing that we did was blog. You can have this, but you realize that what is happening here right now is these things are the only things that are appearing. Of course, if you are building a website, you want more than just this. Okay. And if you know anything about front end development, you should know that the front end of the web is basically made up of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So essentially, we will want to be able to replace this with some HTML code, and coupled with the HTML, we may have some CSS and JavaScript added onto it. So today we're going to learn in Django, how do we handle those HTML parts? For these ones, we just wrote some single line HTML. But then if you have a big project and you're creating the whole homepage or the whole contact us page or the whole blog page, how are you going to handle that? And in today's session, this is what we're going to look at. So let's go back to the code and see what we did the last time in here. Let's go to our project, which is called my company. And inside my company, we have the URLs. So from the URLs, this is the patterns that we have. We had two main patterns, one for pages and another for blogs. By default, we had the admin that we are not touching yet. For now, our focus is on our blog and the pages. So let's get into the pages. For the pages projects, this is it for pages, and let's go to views. So this is what we're doing. We're just returning a basic HTML element, the H1 HTML elements. That's what we're returning. But we are saying that is there a possibility for us to return a whole HTML page? And if yes, the answer is actually yes. How do we go about that? So the first thing that you should know is that in Django, the pages, these pages that we are going to actually show is what we refer to as the templates. And there is a reason why we call them templates. We'll get into it shortly. But then what it means is that we need to create a directory for those templates. So the homepage templates, the about us. I mean, it depends on what you are working on, but for our specific project, we are working on homepage, about us, services, contact. These are pages that we are working on. Therefore, we should be able to create the HTML page for all of these. And to do that, the first thing we want to do within our app we'll go ahead and create a new directory called templates. We'll create a new directory called templates in our app. Let me make sure that I have an eye on the YouTube channel. Sometimes some people join in via the YouTube channel. Oh, okay. Is that okay? So this is what I'll do. I'll bring this here and keep the YouTube channel away. Okay. Yep. So I can see that some people are watching on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, let me drop the Zoom link. So we are having this session live on Zoom right now. So if you're watching on YouTube at the moment, you can join in on Zoom if you want. And I'm dropping the link in the chat for you. Okay. You're welcome. Yeah. Where is the link? Copy link. Okay. Yeah. So I've dropped the link in the YouTube. Okay. Yeah. Now we are good to go. You're good to go. So let's start from here. We want to change our home page, right? So for the home, we did it such that it doesn't even require us writing anything. Okay, go back to the code. And as I was saying, in this app, remember the concept, the difference between an app and a project in Django. For this particular project that we're working on, so far we've created two apps. We've created a Pages app and we've created a blog app. So now we're working on the pages. Within the Pages app, we're going to create a new directory and call it templates. That's the first thing you want to do, where we are going to be keeping our HTML files. There are a few things that you can do in here, or there are a couple of ways that you can handle all of this, but we're going to stick with the convention and the most easy, or let me not say easiest, but then I think it's the most convenient, if I should say, is what we're going to stick with. And maybe along the line, I'll try and explain why you need to do all of this. But for now, just know that we are creating a templates directory within the page or the app that you are working on. And another good practice is to create a subdirectory that bears the same name as your app. I hope no one is confused at this moment. Inside the app called pages, we've created templates. And inside this template directory, at the moment it's empty, but then we're going to go ahead and create another directory and call it pages, which is the same name as the app in which we are. The reason why we do this is that when we are rendering everything, like when we are moving this whole project to production, Django is going to kind of combine all the templates together. And if you have the same names of the files within the templates directory in different apps, there's going to be conflict in the names. So the best practice is to create a subdirectory and give it a specific app's name, so that when Django is creating that universal template and putting all of these things together, it is able to identify specifically each of them. So for instance, in our blog, we will come and create another templates folder or directory, and we are going to create some HTML files in there. If we end up creating an HTML file called index.html within the blog app, and we also have the same index.html within the pages app, when Django is putting everything together, there's going to be that conflict. It's going to get confused, not knowing who does this index.html file belong to. But if we create this subdirectory with the same name, then Django is able to identify that, oh, okay, this particular index.html belongs to, because when he puts it together, he will put them in the various subdirectories. I don't know if it makes sense to you guys. It is one of the concepts that, I mean, it's not super important, but then you need to be aware so that at least if you are going that route, fine. If you see someone else doing it, you also appreciate why they are doing it. That is how I personally prefer to create the stuff. So all that I'm saying right now is, when Django is about to put everything together and run your app, all the various templates directories that you have created. So you created in, let's say this is your app. You had an app called Pages. And inside Pages app, you have created templates. In the same way, you have another app called Blog. Inside this Blog app, you have created another directory called Templates. Right. And an example I'm giving is, we could have just gone into this and said index.html. And this will also go as index.html. But when Django is going to put all of these things together and render them for us, the problem is that it's going to create how Django works. This is how it works. It's going to create like a universal template directory and pull all of these files. So we'll have one index.html, and we'll have another index.html. Now, how will Django now identify that this index.html is for this one or for this one? That's where the conflict comes in. So the best thing to do is, before you create this index.html, go ahead and create another directory called Pages for this Pages app. And over here, go ahead and create another directory within the template called Blog. This means that when Django is about to create this universal template, it will not just go ahead and have these index files. It would rather have what we call Blog and Pages. Then within the Blog directory, it will have index.html. And also within the Pages directory, it will have index.html. So it will not have any problem identifying what belongs to what. It knows just by seeing this, it knows that, okay, this belongs to the Pages app, and this particular one belongs to the Blog app. So that's the reason why we are creating the extra pages within, the extra directory within the templates directory. So even though it feels a bit redundant to you who is writing the code, but the way, the mechanism through which Django works, that is the ideal way for you to put it. So that is why you see me create the pages within template. Now we can go ahead and create a new file in here and call it index, or maybe just to make sure we have the same naming across, but home.html. We can also create, say, about.html. We can have all of those extra files, services.html. We can also have final one, which is contact.html. And for each of these, we may have to go ahead and put in the HTML code. So say this and write something down. Before the lesson, I try to write some bit of HTML, very small HTML. So I'll pull that up and we will use that instead. HTML, I think, supposed to be on the desktop somewhere. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So HTML, it's opening on the other screen, but yeah, that's all that I'm trying to do here. Copy this HTML and paste it here. So very simple. basic HTML. I haven't done much to it. All we have in here is a header that contains the information. Welcome to my company, and it has this navigation, and we have some basic information in the main. Then we have a footer. As simple as that. This is not an HTML class, so I wouldn't go into this, and I want to believe that at least everyone here appreciates this. Otherwise, you may have to go take an HTML course or lesson to appreciate it. Okay, so that is that for the home. Maybe I should go ahead and grab for all of the rest so that we can proceed quickly. We have services. Copy what is here for services. No, services. Paste this here. Save it. Let's go to the next one. What's the next one? Say contact. Grab the HTML for contact. Paste it here. Then about. Let's read about us. So for about us, let's grab that and paste it here. Good. Good job. So now we have created all our HTML files. This is not complete yet. We may have to add in some CSS and the likes. But before we look at adding CSS, let's see how do we now ensure that our document will be showing the HTML. Up until now, it still shows that single line that we did. And the reason why it is showing that is even though we've created a template, we have still not told the view. So the view is still rendering what we gave it, the HTTP response that we gave it from the previous session. So now that we have created a template, we've created some HTML files, we need to go and tell the view to rather render that particular HTML that we have created. That is what we want to show and not this one. So let's get in back to our view. And in here we go to views. And instead of using the HTTP response, if you are using a template, you would rather have to use what we call a render function. And the template is such that we can use a different language. I'm saying different language in quotes. We can use a language known as the Django templating language. And we are going to explore that soon. So you pass it to that function, and that function has been implemented in Django such that it takes all those Django elements in there and renders them into the final HTML outputs that you are going to show. So for now, all we need to do is to tell our view that, hey, we are going to be rendering some Django stuff. And we want you to go pick this particular file and render it. So let's comment this out. Then on the next line, we are supposed to use the render function. And by default, whenever you create an app within the views.py, this is imported by default. That means it is available to you. But if you are creating your own views.py and you don't have it already, it's just from Django.shortcuts, you are importing the render function. So render, and here we'll say return, and the render function takes in two main arguments. The two main arguments, the first one is the request argument. So the request, then the next one is the specific template that you are looking for. So in our case, this is our home. So that should go to the home.html, right? But because we put ours within another directory, by default, we could have just gone ahead and said home.html, right? This would have worked if we didn't have this pages directory. Because all that Django does, when you pass a file within the render function, it is looking for that particular template folder and saying, hey, inside the template folder, I'm looking for home.html. But in our case, within this templates folder, we still went ahead to create pages directory. So that means that this cannot be found because we don't have the the home.html directly within the template. Let's try rendering it on the browser and see for ourselves what it looks like. So we'll clear this and run that. And it says template does not exist at home.html. So that's the error we are getting, that it cannot find that particular template that we are calling at home.html. And I've explained why that is so, because we have pages directory. So that means that we have to do pages slash then home.html. Save this, and hopefully this time around it should find it. And voila, we have our HTML displaying right on the screen when we get to that particular endpoint. I hope it makes sense. In the same way, I can proceed and make changes to all of this. Maybe I should just copy and paste so that we hurry up. It's still within pages. Remember, if you didn't create that extra directory, then you do not need to bring any directory. But this will be about, and let's go on. Let's we no longer need these ones, so we can actually delete them. And this will be for contact. Okay, then we can equally delete this and add services and save it. Once this is saved, if we go back and run about, we get the about page. If we run services, we get a services page. If we run contact, we get a contact us page. So you can see that now we are rendering all the HTML that we have. Pretty cool. Any questions up to here? Any questions? All right. So if there are no questions, we want to proceed. Even though we've been able to add our HTML, of course, HTML without CSS looks very ugly. So how can we add some CSS to it? Especially if we want, oh, why am I typing CSS here? Especially if we want our CSS to be in a separate file, maybe one CSS file that's applicable to all of the pages. How do we do that? So adding a CSS file or a JavaScript file or even images that you are going to be able to add, those files are termed as static files. They are static because they do not change, like they hardly change. And that is in Django, there is a concept of static files. If you remember from either the first or second session that we held, I talked about it in the settings page, the settings.py of the project. I mentioned something like that, but not to bore you with all those details again. For now, we need somewhere to write our CSS code. So the simplest way is just as we created templates directory within our app, which in this case, the app is pages. Just as we created the templates, we should go ahead and create what is called the static directory. So within the pages app, we create static directory. And another good practice, just as we did with the template, would be to create within the static directory, create another directory with the same name as the app's name. Just as we did with templates, we could have just gone ahead and put these things in here directly, but it is also good practice to come in here and create, say, pages, and within pages, you put in your CSS file, or you create, say I create another directory called CSS before I write you may see these things to be unnecessary, but if you're building a very big project with a lot of apps within it, these become necessary. All I want you to understand, these are like the common things that you may be doing and the reason why you'll be doing it. But then it doesn't mean that is the only way to do it. You can actually proceed without creating the pages directory or the CSS directory. Just go straight and create your file called styles.css. And that is also acceptable. You do not need to worry much about it. I hope that is clear. For the CSS, let me see if I can grab CSS that I wrote. CSS that I wrote. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not going to bore you with the CSS, but all that is here is browser resets and some settings for the body and the header. We come to the navigations and the main section, finally the footer. So I wouldn't go through the CSS to explain what it is. That is not the purpose of this session. Now we've created a CSS file named as styles.css, and it can be found in the directory known as static. Like static, in the static directory, we go into pages directory, then we go into CSS directory. I said that is a lot. You can decide to eliminate all of that, but that is what we have right now. And even though we've created it, we've not added it to our HTML. What is the best way to add the CSS to our HTML? Before I show you that, I want us to branch a bit and talk about Django templating language. Then you would appreciate the syntax to be able to understand exactly what I'm going to do. So let me bring up my board and let's talk about the Django templating language. So you've seen that we've written some HTML codes there. The question is, what's the essence of the HTML that we are writing? If it was HTML that we needed to write, why did we have to go through Django? Because we could have just created our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript stuff without even bothering about Django. But using Django, that's a web framework, enables us to integrate some dynamic content into our website. So the website we are creating right now, we should be able to add some sort of back end to it where it is connected to a database and we are able to pull data and render these dynamically. That means that there are some information that we may want to have within our HTML, but at the time that we are creating these HTML files, we do not have that data or we do not know what that data is going to be. So we are going to make room within this HTML file such that information from the back end can easily be integrated into the HTML. One of the easiest way to add stuff to HTML is through the use of JavaScript. JavaScript can be used to manipulate what we call the DOM. You can use it to manipulate the DOM, either to insert, delete, and do all of those things. But now we are using Python, which is another programming language. So how do we integrate Python data into HTML? There isn't a direct way for us to do that. But then there is what we refer to as the templating language that enables us to now insert data into HTML files and render them dynamically. So that is a trick. If you are using any Python framework at all for web development, you need to know a templating language to be able to now integrate the stuff that you are getting from your Python back end to the front end of your application. And one of such templating language is what we call Django templating language. So Django by itself comes with its own templating language. If you are using a framework like Flask, Flask on its own does not have a templating language on its own. It uses what we call the Ginger templating language. And the interesting thing is that I want to believe Django even ships with the Ginger templating language, and you can even change it. So let me show you something. In settings of our application, our projects, when we come to my company, go to settings.py. In here, where you find templates, right? When we were talking about it, I mentioned it, but you might have forgotten. So this here that you are seeing, the back end, is telling Django what templating language should I use? What back end should I use for this template? So it is set to that of Django using the Django template. If we want, we can set this to Ginger, which is the one that Ginger. Yeah. So we could actually change it to this. And this is what Flask uses. Okay, so it means I would have to import because it's not finding it. So we'd have to import it. Yeah. But at the end of the day, what I'm saying is that this is also another templating language. But by default, we have one in Django. And that is what we are going to learn today. If you have used Ginger before and you think you like using Ginger, you already know how to use it, you can easily customize this backend to now use the Ginger templating language. And in fact, you can use almost any other templating language. Like the first templating language that I learned, I think it's called Blade with Laravel. I think it's called Blade. Sorry, let me just. So there are a lot of them. That's all I'm trying to say. There are a lot of them. Blade, templates, okay, yeah, Laravel. Yeah, great. So it's called Blade. Then there is also what we call EJS. Yes, EJS, I think for Express.js, we have a templates language like that. Oh no, so all I'm saying here right now is that there are a lot of these templating languages. It depends on what you want to use, but it is good that Django originally ships with the Django templating language, and it makes a lot of things easy for us. So we're going to focus on that. Now that we are aware of what a templating language is, let's see how it plays out for us. So with Django, the templating language Django templates language. So instead of saying that long thing, if I say DTL, you should now know what I'm talking about. DTL. It is going to allow us to now pass some variables from our backend into the HTML file. It is going to allow us to use some programming constructs like loops. So we can have some for loops in here. Remember, we are not actually writing Python code in the HTML. This is different. It is not Python code that we are writing in the HTML. We are about to learn a new syntax. That is the DTL, the Django template language. And that is what we are going to use to make our HTML dynamic. There is something like if statements. So all that you are going to do right now is you're going to learn a new sort of language, templating language. Oh, if I want to write an if statement in DTL, how do I write it? If I want to write a for loop, how do I write it? And there is another what? So let me put them well before I talk about that. So we've talked about using variables. There is also a concept known as tags, and that's what I'm going to show you. That's where you can find the for loops, you can find the if statements, we can find extend, and many others. We'll talk about them soon. Then there is also what we call filters. By the end of today's session, we would have gone through all of them for you to see exactly how each of these work. Then The one very important thing is template inheritance. Template inheritance. Inherit. I hope I'm spelling it right. Anyway, let me show you something in our code for home.html. You see that we have this declaration here, this thing. You, if for nothing at all, just pay attention to up to the header. You realize that we have the same thing in here, up to the header. We have the same information in here, except the only difference is the title part. But apart from it, it's the same information. Django follows a principle that we refer to, highly respected principle in programming known as dry. What is the full meaning of dry? Those of you on the stream, let me hear you. What's the full meaning of dry?
Don't repeat yourself.
Don't repeat yourself. So that is a principle that Django obeys so much. So right now we are disobeying that principle by repeating ourselves. The same thing is the same code. So why keep repeating yourself? So one of the ways to avoid or to obey dry, that is avoid repeating yourself, is to leverage template inheritance. This means that the ones that are similar across board, we can abstract those ones into a parent template. And the children template can inherit from the parent. So one particular template will have all the common elements. Then we'll now pick and replace depending on what specifically we are looking for. And don't worry, you'll get to appreciate it soon. So these are 4 major concepts that you need to know how to use when you talk about the Django templating language. And I'm going to show you all of this. But before then, there is one tag known as the static tag. So, okay, I shouldn't have even jumped to that yet, but let's see how you write tags in Django. Remember, using the Django templating language, we are writing this in the HTML. So within the HTML, if I want to add any of the tags, remember that HTML uses tags. We have an opening tag and a closing tag and a content that forms the element of an HTML. So think of it like that. But this time around, in normal HTML, you have your tags. This represents an opening tag. The content to go here, and we have the closing tag like this. And whatever the tag name is will go here, and the tag name as well will go here. In Django or Django templating language, the tag is represented this way. The tag name goes here. Then the content goes here. And we end the, so this would be the closing tag. Pay attention. This is, how is it called? Opening tag in the Django templating language. Opening tag. And this is the closing tag. So for instance, let me give a typical example. If we are using the if tag in Django templating language, we'll write it like this. The curly braces, percentage sign, then we'll write the word if. And this if there is a condition, we'll write the condition here. So let's say if n is less than 10, we'll close our opening tag. Then the whatever should be rendered if this condition is true, we'll write that statement here. And when we are done, we will close the if with end if. I know that this is a bit new, but yes, this is the templating language and what it looks like if you have to write a tag with Django templating language. All I need you to remember from here right now is that When we say the tag in Django, we start the tag with a curly braces followed by a percentage symbol, the name of the tag, and we close it like that. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you. Don't worry about these things. You'll see them in action shortly. But for now, let me introduce you to a tag known as the static tag. And it's simply written as this. And what it does is that it will automatically pull the path to where you have your static files. It will automatically pull the path to where you have your static files. So you can just go ahead and add the rest of your path. So let's come, okay, but before then, before you are able to use the static tag in any HTML code, you first have to load it. You first have to load it. That is all I want you to know. Forget about everything if you didn't understand it. All of these exist. You're going to learn about them shortly. But right now, I wanted us to add some CSS to our code, and therefore I needed to let you get this fundamental understanding before we go there. So all I'm saying right now to you is that before we use the static file, we know that there is a static tag. But before we can use the static tag, we need to load it. So to load it, we use the load tag. Remember what a tag looks like? The percentage sign followed by the word load. What are we loading? We are loading static. So you say load static, then you close it. This should be on top of your HTML file. Once you have done this, we can now proceed, and within our HTML file, wherever we need a path to the static file, we can proceed to use the tag static like that. Okay, so let's see this in action in our code. Let's start with our home page. Remember that we want to be able to point our CSS file in here, and our CSS file is being stored in a static directory. To get access to this directory within our code, Django makes it easy for us by using the static tag. To be able to use the static tag, we need to load static. And how we do that is this way, by writing load static. And this will just be at the top. Once you've done this, we now have access to static and we can use it in here. So link, we want to link the CSS. Now, instead of us going to look for the actual directory and giving the full path to that particular directory, what we are going to do right now is to use the Django tag, static tag, and say static, and then we add the rest. So now you see that our styles.css is actually within pages CSS, then styles.css. So we go ahead and say pages slash CSS slash styles.css. So all that we have done here is that this tag static here is actually going to pull the absolute path for this directory, and we can append. So this is like we appending pages slash CSS slash styles.css. So depending on what you used, if I put the styles directly within the static directory without the pages and the CSS directory, it would have looked something like this. But in our case, we created pages, and within pages, we created CSS before we created styles.css. That is why we have it being rendered like this. So now let's save it and see if everything works fine for us. Where is our, oh, can be rich. Did we turn the server off? Oh, so when I did the ginger thing, the server went down. Okay, let's clear this and run. Where am I? Where did I write the clear? Everything all right? Okay, so clearing here. And now let's run Python manage.py run server. Let's run this again. Okay, so now it is up and running. Let's refresh this. And as you can see on the screen now, our CSS is working. Originally, we didn't have that. So let's intentionally break something here, delete these things, and see what happens. Refresh it, and the CSS is not working. It cannot find any CSS like that. Let's say we just said pages slash that, then refresh it, still not working. Okay, then CSS, because it's in the CSS directory, save this and refresh it, and now it is working. All right, what if we forgot and didn't load static? Remember that we had to put this here. So if we forgot it and didn't load it, what does it look like? Let's refresh this. And it says template syntax error at invalid block tag on line 8 static. Did you forget to register or load this tag? So now it's good practice to always know what happens when something like this is it breaks, so that now I know anytime I'm seeing an error like this, it probably means I have not loaded the tag yet. So I come back in here in my HTML and I need to load this particular tag. Any questions up to now? All that we have done is to try using the static tag, which is part of the Django templating language, to help us load our CSS. This same way we can load images, we can load JavaScript files, like any sort of static file, we can use this tag, which is a static tag, to load it. And it's as easy as stating static. As soon as you state static, it's like we have up to the path up to static. So we don't care where it started from. All we know is that where exactly is my file of interest. In this case, styles.css. We went straight to pages, CSS, styles.css. Any questions? I'm not paying much attention to the charts. Are there any chat? No. Any questions? Yes, yes.
Okay. Doc, please. I want to ask the question that um is that the importance, like creating a subfolders or subdirectories under the static. So assuming you are working with multiple applications,
Yeah.
like let's say 5 or 6 applications, and then you have to call the static for each of the applications, it's actually not going to differentiate between the static in each of the applications, right?
No,
That's if you
so
don't have subdirectories in each of the apps.
yeah. So if you don't have subdirectories in each of the apps, right now, if we call it inside here, at least it's being able to pick it directly from the particular app that we have. But then when they have all been combined like that, that is when the problem comes in. So if all the files have the same name, then you may end up running into some issues, right? So there are several ways you can do this. You can decide to do it without necessarily creating these things, but making sure that you are giving it unique file names. That is also possible. There's also the possibility of, instead of creating the static folder for each app, you create a universal static project or directory so that every one of them has their static files within it. In fact, if you are building something, sometimes, like personally, I would prefer that, especially for the static files, over having to create static files for every one of them, because sometimes this CSS that I've written, I may want to use it in multiple places and not just this particular app. So there's a use case for that. But if you want to go that route, there are a few settings that we'll need to effect, which we haven't talked about that yet. So for now, we just focus on using the static directory within our app. So for each app, we are going to create one like this, and best practice, create a separate directory within it that bears the same name as that of the app. I hope that is helpful.
Yes, Doc. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right. Okay.
Hello, Doc.
Hi.
Please, are we yet to solve the problem with the repetition? I mean, with the headers. Oh,
Yeah. We are yet to tackle it.
okay. Thank
So
you very much.
you're welcome. That will be when we start talking about the template inheritance. Okay. Good. All right. So now we've been able to add our static file, the CSS. We can go ahead and add them to our HTML, the about page, the services, the contacts page. We can do that. But because we've talked about the repetition, and eventually we are going to solve that, I don't want to bore us going to add to every one of them. In fact, it's just simply copying this and that and adding it to them, but we don't need it now. So the other thing is that right now, the title of the page is being hard coded in here. And we talked about how we can use this whole thing is going to be separated into one template that the rest will inherit from. So how can we control something here dynamically? Can we just do it such that when the page is being rendered, we pass some values from the view and say, okay, for if it is home page, then this is the value that we want to pass. That's the essence of us using Django, right? I mean, one of the important reasons why we are using a whole complex web framework for something that looks seemingly easy to do, because all that we have created is HTML and CSS file. Why did we have to use Django? But the power that Django affords us is that now we can have some sort of value that we are going to pass to it. How is that possible? So Django has the views, has something we call context. So we are able to add context. Why is this thing broken? Oh, did I not turn it right? Yeah. So it has something called context. The context is that we are creating, this is, please pay attention, it's a Python something. If you don't know Python, then you are in trouble right now. So the context is actually a dictionary. I believe by now you all know what a dictionary is in Python. It's a key and has a value, and they are put in curly braces. This is what a dictionary looks like. So once you assign this dictionary, you pass it to the template itself, you can access all the values within this dictionary, within the HTML itself. So see, practically, this is what happens. Inside your view, let me delete this. So practically inside this view, you will grab some data from the database, depending on what is required, or you do some refinements of data here. Then you now want to render whatever you have refined or the data that you have gotten from the database. You want to now render it on your web page. So assuming that this is a user who is logging in and you want to render that this user has logged in, you want to pass their username and all of that information that you need on the front end of your website. You want to pass it to your home.html. That is where the context comes in. So we are going to create a dictionary with all of those details. So for instance, I could go ahead and create, let me just call it contest, and it's going to be a Python dictionary, right? And Python dictionary simply is key with a value. So in this case, say the name is Obed Ehoneah, and what age? Let me use small letters. Age is 1,000 years. Then what else can we pass? Okay, for now, let's say these are the only things we are interested in. We really want to show the person's login name and their age, which is not realistic. Do we usually show age in homepage? Yeah, but then the person's, okay, maybe username. I think that would be better. Username. And my username is Ehoneah Obed. We want to pass this data to our homepage so that we can display it. So we created a dictionary like this. All that we can do now is this render function can take an extra argument. You see the pop-up that shows here, it takes up a context, which is of type mapping. And the map is made up of a list of strings with the type is any, right? Don't worry so much. All that you need is just a Python dictionary to pass here. So I can go ahead and put the word contest here because I've created this as a variable that is assigned to a dictionary. As simple as this, I have passed the context variables to my document, the HTML. So now if I go into this home.html, I have access to the data here. Maybe we should prove it so that you see. But to prove this, remember, this is some Python data that we are sending to this. But this function here, render function, is actually a Django implemented function that takes in a request, takes in some context, and now converts this. So it renders it. How it renders is that it's going to pick the home.html and look for all the Django templating constructs in there, replace them with their values. So it's going to evaluate all of those Django constructs, the tags, the variables, the filters. It's going to evaluate all of them and get the final output as HTML and return an HTTP response. That is exactly what this render function is going to do. It's going to return an HTTP response with the information that we have provided it with. So what happens is that after it has rendered it, it's going to leave this dictionary in the HTML. We have access to it. So if I come here right now, I have access to the name, this name. So I don't even need to call context because it will process it and leave all of these dictionary values. So the keys in this dictionary can be accessed within the HTML file. But how do we access Django variables? So that is one other thing you need to know. I told you earlier that for tags, this is a syntax for tags. For variables, the syntax is a bit different. The variable is called with the double curly braces, the name of the variable, then close it with double curly braces, closing. As simple as that. So now that we have created a variable in here, these ones, if I put, let's go to home. If I come here, say I want to welcome Obed to our company, all I need to do is put this double curly braces and say name. As simple as that. I have access to this name. Where is this name coming from? It's coming from my view where I had a key called name in this dictionary. I hope it's not confusing to anyone. Let's render it to see whether it's really working or not. Refresh this and you can see, welcome Obed Ehoneah to my company. So this is the coolest, one of the coolest things that you are going to be able to do with Django, such that you can now get data. Your view can interact with your database, get data, refine it in any way you want, and copy this content into a dictionary, whatever you want to present dynamically in your HTML. If you were using JavaScript, on the other hand, you would have been doing DOM manipulation to insert data somewhere and update stuff. But now we are using Python. How do we do it? We use Python on the back end to create a dictionary and pass that dictionary to the render function. The render function has been taught, like it's been coded to take all of these constructs and convert them. So it's going to render this template, but before it does that, it will go in and look for, oh, okay, wherever it sees this thing, the render function will come and take the context here and look for what the key name is and replace it with a value. So the final output of this render function is just like we had originally, like this, except that it would have rendered all the things in there back into HTML. There is no Python, there's no template language stuff. It renders everything back to HTML and now showcases that on your web page. So very, very simple. If I come here and instead of name, I use, say, username and save this, and you come here, refresh it, you see that it's rather using my username. And we can add any kind of information we want to this particular page. So one of the things I want us to do, this was just for an example, we would rather want to, let me delete this contest, would rather want to have, say, the page name. This page name is called home, right? So that it can automatically declare that welcome to the home page. Let's say we are interested in something like that. So how we do that is we come here and we say, let's create a contest and say this is, let's say page, what page name is then home page. If we have that dictionary, we can go ahead and pass the context directly here. This is one of the ways that we do it. The other way we can do it is instead of declaring it here, if it is not a lot, you can just go ahead and write the dictionary itself here and say page name and it's equal to home page. Save this. So in here, previously, what I was doing was I was creating the dictionary and passing the variable that I assigned to the dictionary here. But if it is not a lot, I can write it as just a single line. In fact, you can write it as, even if it is a lot, you can still write it in there, but it wouldn't be nice, readable, like all of that. So personally, I prefer to create the dictionary before I pass it to this one. So it's very easy that way. Let's cut this, right? Contest here. You can call it anything that you want, right? It doesn't have to be called contest. You can call it anything you want. Save this. And now when we come here, I can go on and say say here, welcome. We don't have anything called. So instead of saying welcome to my company, we want to say welcome to page name. Okay. So now let's refresh this and it says welcome to home page. This means that we can do this for all the other pages so that when we go there, we are able to get these specific ones. Before we go on, let me introduce you to another tag that will also be helpful for us. Let's go into our home. Yeah. So the reason I'm seeing it now, we have these things here, but you can't click on it because we've not added the links here. We are using the asterisk, hashtag that is not sending us anywhere. So there is another tag that you need to be aware of. In fact, when you are working with Django templating language, you need to understand variables, how to use variables. Then the various tags, there are a lot of them. For the tags, there are a lot of them. So we need to understand the various tags. Then we need to also understand filters. We would get to them soon. Then what was the other thing I wrote? The template inheritance, which we will also equally get to soon. So one more tag that I want to introduce you to is the URL tag. The URL tag. So now let's go back to when we created the links, the URLs, this particular URL, we gave it names. If you remember, when we created URLs, we gave it names. With these particular names, we can easily have access to these URLs or this path just by calling the names. And that is how we're going to achieve that is using that particular URL tag. So all you need to do is write the tag URL and write the URL name here. The name that you wrote when you were creating the URL, you put it here, and that means you have generated a link to that particular URL, or you have that full URL. Let's illustrate this in our code. So in the home.html, we want it says that anytime this is clicked, it takes us to the home page. If they click on about, it should take us to about page. They click here, it should take us to services. If they click contact us. And in our urls.py, we call this about, we call this contact, we call this home, we call this services. So that is all we need to know. We come here and use the URL tag, which is written as this, right? But in here, this is specifically for home. That is for home. And let's do same. Let me copy this. We'll do same for this. This is about. Then we do same for this as well. This is services. Then finally, we have contacts. Remember, all these names, the home, the about, the services, the contact, they are coming from this specific URL patterns that you defined here. You gave them names, so you could call them with the URL tag. So now when we save this and go refresh our page, no way. Reverse for this not found. It's not valid view or pattern. Okay, let's see. Still not found. Okay. Yeah, so I think I made a mistake here. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, so it needs the, sorry about that, the quotation mark around it. Okay. All right. So now let's refresh this and voila. This, so we've not implemented it on the others. That's one painful thing for us right now, because we would have to repeat every one of these things that we are doing. We have to repeat for all the 4 pages. Imagine you have 10 different pages. You need to repeat it for all of them. So to cut down on those repetitions, we'll be doing the template inheritance. That is what will prevent us. So now that we've added this, we should also go copy this back in about.html, copy it to services.html, copy it to contact.html, but that is a lot of work and we don't want to be doing all of that work. So let's talk about template inheritance. What is it? Now you all have seen how frustrating it is to be repeating stuff. So what we can do is within this templates directory, the pages directory, we can create one file and call it, say, base.html. And this file is going to contain all the other parts that are the same across the various pages. Let me try illustrating it out before we code it. So see what is going to happen. We're going to have base.html as this file. Okay. And we are going to write all the code. So we have a doc type declaration, every code that we want. But in here, we are going to put in some Django tags that would allow others to be replaced. So it's like we are saying, hey, you are just a placeholder. Be there. Whenever they inherit from you, they may want to replace you. Okay. So for instance, the part where we have the title, what we are going to do is that we are going to say to this place that, hey, whatever is going to be here for now, we either will not put anything here or we'll put something there, except that that is going to be replaced if we are inheriting you in a different page. So say within the home.html, we are going to inherit this base.html. Then whatever we declare within HTML, home.html, will be used to replace this. We can have several spots within this base.html file where these things would be replacing. I don't know if you all understand what is happening, but essentially, we are going to have this base.html file such that it has all the repetitions, all the repetitive parts will be in there. And we are going to leave like what people will usually call potomanto or something, like space within it, and say, hey, this is yet to be filled. Whichever template that is inheriting from you will provide its value for you to use here. Okay, so now let's go to the code and see how that will be done. So instead of starting everything from scratch, we can copy what we have in the home and put it in base, since they all have similar things. And now we know that one of the things that is going to be different is the title page. Hi. Was someone saying something? Oh, okay. So in the chat, I'm seeing that Nixon was asking, must the dictionary be named contest? And I hope you've gotten an answer to it. You can call it whatever you want. You can even decide to put it directly within the render function without giving it a name. So that is the answer. Okay. So now we know very well that we are going to have to replace this. So how do we do it? We are going to use another tag in Django known as the block tag. Block. This block tag says that, hey, I'm replacing this block, or I am, what's the right way to use here? It's like you going to an event with a friend and the friend is yet to come, but you know that this event is going to be filled up. So you reserve that seat and say, hey, this seat is for my friend. So anybody else who is coming knows that, oh, there's someone sitting here, even though that human being hasn't come. That is what this block is doing. It's saying there is something going to be here. Anytime this file is inherited, whoever is inheriting it may have the specific information to put it here. So I'm just reserving space. That is all that this block is doing within the base file. It's reserving space for it to be replaced by the main content. Okay, so remember that I taught you earlier that for Django tags, we can have the opening tag like this, and the closing tag for block will be end block. So for block, you'd always have to end the block. There are some tags that are self-closing. We didn't have to look at the end block. For instance, when we talked about the static tag, we didn't look at end tag for static. When we talked about load, we didn't look at end. But for block, you have to end it. For if, you have to end it. For you have to end it. We have talked about that. Yeah. So Austin, that's exactly what you said. It's a placeholder that says that, hey, I'm reserving this space for someone that is yet to come. Okay. All right. So instead of doing this, let's add a blog here, and you can give the blog a name so that you can easily identify it. This, we are going to call it title. So this is the blog title, and it's going to end at this point. So let's end our blog. Okay. Hey, blog. All right. One practice is that you can actually write end blog without necessarily writing the name of the blog, right? But it's good practice to write it so that you know which block am I ending. Otherwise, you see in your code end block, but you don't know which specific block that this ends. So this is perfectly fine for you to say end block. Remember, I can take out my company or leave it in. If I take it out, it means that if a specific template inherits from this and does not provide a value for the block title, nothing will be placed here. But if I leave it here, this is going to be like the default value. So if they do not replace it, then leave this there. So for now, we have my company. All that I'm saying is that if a template inherits from you but do not provide value for the block, the title block, then use my company. Okay, so let's try just that. No, so I think let me go ahead and do all of it so that we know exactly what we want. Page name, we have the page name here. Okay, do I really want to leave the page name here? Nope. So this is the base, therefore we cannot use the page name here. So for now, let's leave it as a block and call this block page name. Block page name. Okay. And we can end the block here. So for this particular example, I will intentionally not, this would be end block. I intentionally, my case, okay. I intentionally not add any content. That's the default value. I won't add any default value. Okay. So that is handled. We are building our base template. This will be the main part. So please pay attention. Let me bring up all those HTML files. If you go to about.html, you realize that up until this header, they are almost the same. It's the main part that differs. The same as when you come to contact. We have the same thing up to header. Then the main part is different, as well as the footer. The footer is the same across board. In fact, the rest of it is the same across board. So in our base, what we can do is we'll have to get rid of this main part. That's the major difference. And we are going to turn that into a block. Call it the main block. So we can say block and call this main. Right. And in here, we're also going to leave it empty, but we still have to close it and say end block. And which block are we ending? The main block. Okay, good. For the footer, it's the same thing across board. So this is our base. Our base is ready. All that we need is for any other page, we'll need what the block title should be. We'll need what the page name should be. Then we need what the main block should be. That's all that we need from the others. So let's head to the home and fix that first. The first thing we want to do is I'll just cut this main part because that's the major part that we need. Then I'll delete the rest. The first thing you want to do is tell this particular template that you want it to inherit from the base template. That's the very first thing you should do before you write any other thing. It should inherit from the base template. How do we do that? We use a tag called the extends tag, extends. please, some of these things that we are learning, it would baffle you to know that they are very similar across. In fact, the notion is similar across the various templating languages. So extend, the concept of extend, you may find it in another template language like Blade. Okay, so most of the times when you're learning these things, don't think that you are just learning it for this particular language. If you really understand it, it will be easy for you to now pick up any other templating language. It will be easy for you to pick up any other templating language. And I've mentioned some examples. I've told you in Python, we are looking at Django right now, the Django templating language. We have Ginger 2 as well. In PHP, you'll be looking at, say, Blade for Laravel. In JavaScript, you'll be looking at EJS for Express, and there are several others. Okay, but the same principles, same concepts. You are going to have that sort of inheritance in almost every one of them, and you have to extend something. Okay, the way you write it, the syntax is what may be different, but the concept is the same. So I need you to fully understand what is happening here. We have already declared this base.html. That's what we want people to be inheriting from, right? And we've put placeholders that will be replaced with the content that we provide. So the first thing we need to do when we come here is say, oh, we need you to extend. What do we need you to extend? The base.html. We need you to extend the base.html. All that this English means is that please inherit everything that is in base.html. And all we need you to do is provide us with the information that will be used to replace the placeholders within base.html. So the first thing that needs to be replaced right now is the block title. Once we've written this, we can go ahead and declare the block title. So we go on and say, okay, for the block title, what is the value that we want to give it? We want to give it the value home. That is all. Then, sorry. If that is it, then we need to end our block. So we say end block and call this, what's the name for this title? Okay. All right. So let's see, before we proceed, let's see if everything is working the way we want it. Maybe this wouldn't show much. Let me do the next one, because this you need a tab. Let's do the blog page name, right? Blog page name. Let's do that. So that's the things that we need to replace is all that we are doing. Page name. Then the page name for this would be home page. So from I just want to differentiate it from what we originally had just by putting the inherited there. You know that we are inheriting it. And block. Which block is this? It's page name. Okay, then okay, so now let's go back and run our app to see. We have an issue with base.html does not exist. Template does not exist. Okay. So you should know why it says template does not exist. We have a subdirectory called pages, and I forgot to add that. So pages, then base.html, refresh this. And you see our homepage says welcome to homepage inherited. And every other thing that was on the base is being inherited. So now we are not repeating any code. We are just filling in the blocks. So I can go on and fill the next block. What's the next block? The main block. This is the main block. So come in here. Let's fill in the main block and say block main. And the information we had in there is all of this HTML. And once we are done, we say end block. Which block are we ending? Main. Then save this. If we go back and refresh this, now we have data in there, which is coming from what we did here. So now see how our home.html looks like. Very simple. We've abstracted everything into the base.html, and now this is all that it looks like. That is the power of template inheritance. And it's a similar thing that we are going to do for the rest of the pages. And you see that the major difference will be this main session. But before that, remember that we give some context in our view for the home page. So I'll go ahead and add the same context to all of them and give them their names. The thing I want to do here, so for each of them, we'll have the page name and we have the title. Title will be home. No, sorry, this is about. And this is the title. The page name is about us page. So I will copy this and add that to this as well. Okay. Please, if you are confused about anything or you have a question, go ahead and ask. I'm happy to discuss it. All right, now we can copy this context and have it here as well, so that this will be the contact us page, contact. And when you come to the services page, we have, this is services, or say our services page. And this is services. So now we can dynamically render all of these in any of our pages. So let's go to home. Instead of writing home here, we are going to use the title. I hope you now know where this title is coming from. This title is coming from the context that you have created in the home view. The context here has title. So it is going to replace this with a value home. Then for the page name, let's use the variable page. I think it was underscore name, right? Let's confirm that. Yeah, we call it page underscore name. So that is where that would also be coming from. Now, with knowledge of all of these, remember that they are all inheriting from the same base.html. Okay, so they behave the same way, and we have the same variables for the context. So I can equally just copy this part and go to each of them, say about, and replace everything up to here with that, right? And here I'm going to get rid of the rest, and I would then end this with end block main. I hope you guys are not seeing magic. All that I've done is this extends the base HTML that is telling it that, okay, the about.html is about to inherit from base.html. Then we are picking the variable title and we are going to replace it with, when you take the base.html, there is a title construct here. This block, we are going to replace that, as well as the page name. Then finally, we have the block for main, and that is all. So now, instead of all those repetition that we're supposed to do for the static pages, the URLs and all, we are not doing any of those things. And now it's easily just copy this, paste it in any of these pages. And I'm now in, this is contact page. All I care about is to delete this and replace that. Then let me copy this, delete these things as well up to the footer side, and this will be end block. Yeah, ending a main block. Save this, We have the last thing to go, which is the services page. The same thing, we are deleting from header upwards and replacing with the block constructs, and can copy this and paste it down here. Sorry, I need to get rid of the footer and say end block. Okay, as simple as that. Now our page is very dynamic. Okay, if we click on any of these, you can see that the CSS has been applied to all of them and they all work fine. Our website is ready. So imagine if you had HTML for a company itself, like you had well-structured HTML, you have written your CSS. Now you are done with the basic page, like 4 pages website. If they didn't really have like a strong back end, there's no database like that, you have everything figured out now. It is done. And that is how easy Django makes these things. But the more power comes in when we are able to use the back end in terms of using a database with some data and manipulate the data before we display it. And that will happen when we look at models, right? Let me pause here and see if you have any questions. I know today we are going to exceed our time because we still have a few other things to look at. At least we've done the template inheritance. We have filters to go, and that's very important. So yeah, any questions? Pause here for questions. Yes, yes. So I'm seeing a question in the Q&A. It's been a while since you asked the question, but so do we always need to use static? Have you gotten an answer to that already? Some. Otherwise, you may want to unmute and ask. I don't know exactly what you were referring to in particular, so we can discuss it. Have you gotten an answer to it? Hello, Sam.
Hello.
Yeah. Have you gotten an answer to your question?
I know if you could just wrap around it for me, I'd
What,
appreciate.
so what in particular were you referring to, that do we always need to use static? Is it like the word static? Are you asking if we can use something, a different word? Or like what's the reason why you asked the
Yeah,
question? Yeah.
yeah, primarily that. And if it's if it's a given that whatever you do, you would have to use it.
Yeah, for as long as you are using some static files, that is the easiest way to use static files. So you are using HTML, sorry, you have some JavaScript file, you have some CSS file, you have some images, which are like common things that you have in almost every web application or website that you are building. So you have to use it. If you are not using them, like you're not using that has already been provided and configured within Django. And in fact, when you are launching your app to production, it makes it very easy. Otherwise, you end up launching it and your images are not showing, your CSS is not showing, like it's not being applied the way you want it, and all of that. So to avoid those issues, I think static is something that you have to stick with. Does that help?
Okay, so it's like a basic foundation.
Yeah.
All right, all right. Well noted. Well noted.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So when you look inside your settings of PY, you see that that's one of the things. Static, see here, we have the static URL and static root as well. I forgot exactly where static roots can be found. So when you are launching your sites in production, you'd have to configure the static roots. Forgotten exactly where it is, but I think you have to add it. And that is what, if you are using a web server like say Apache or Nginx,
Okay.
they will know exactly which files they should use to render like your static files. So it's quite an important construct in Django. Okay, time is not on our side and I'm feeling down a bit, but we need to do at least some basic stuff to finish the Django templating language. So there are common things. There are one or two things I want us to look at. I want us to appreciate what filters are and how to use them. Then I want us to appreciate how to use the for loops in Django templating language. And finally, I want us to look at the if statements in Django templating language. These are the last three things I want us to look at before we leave here. To be able to do this, we are going to switch from our pages. Now we finish our pages. That's the home page, about us page, contact us, and services page. We finish those ones. We want to switch gears and move to the blog. And that would enable me to illustrate all of these. So let's get going. Which one will be first? So what we're going to do, let's go into our blog. Let's close this. I hope you are enjoying this. I know there is a lot in here. And once again, we can skip some of these things and jump over and finish whatever we are doing, but it wouldn't make sense. Everybody needs to really understand what is going on so that when you leave here, you can build your own stuff. At least now you should be able to take Django, install Django, build a Django, at least a static website that is you can navigate here and there. You can put in some dynamic data. At least you should be able to do that before our next session where we look at models and connect to database and all. Okay, so we want to go into our blog app, and just as we did for the other one, we are going to also create a template directory. Templates. And within this templates directory, we are going to create a new directory called, I hope you're able to guess it, blog, which is like the name of the app. And within this blog, we can create a file called, say, index.html. And this index.html file will be like the archive where you have all the multiple blogs listed. That is where we'll have this. Okay. I think I wrote code for this already for the HTML so that we don't have to worry ourselves. Yeah, so this is a copy the blog archive and paste it here. Okay, that is done. Then we'll have another file for, sorry, we have another file for the individual post. So let's call it post.html. Then let me go and copy that as well. That is blog post here. All right. Now we need to connect our views so that they display this accordingly. So let's go to our views. And in our views right now, we only have this, which is blog. And what does it mean? This is actually, oh yeah, I remember doing this. So let's get rid of the request method. We'll look at them sometime in the future. Okay, so I really want to differentiate this blog archive from the blog post. No, so this is not a blog archive. This would be the individual blog post. So let's call this blog post, and we'll define another one for the blog archive. Blog archive requests. So that is all that it needs. Then we're going to return. Remember that we are returning a template. So we use the render function and we pass the request to it. And what page are we rendering? Blog slash index.html. Okay. Let's do same with this. Get rid of this and render requests. Then what do we have? Blog slash post.html. Okay. The last bit will be our URL. The patterns that we have here, currently we have one that goes to views.blog, but we've changed that, right? We called it blog post. So let's change the name as well to blog post. All right. Then let's duplicate this. I need to change one of them. If they come to the index, we want to go to blog archive. And we call this blog archive. So all I'm doing here right now is just setting the path so that we are able to access both this, the blog post and the blog archive. I hope that makes sense. So now let's go back to our page and see for ourselves what we have. Where is this? Go here to blog. So this is for when it is going to the the blog post, right? But if there is nothing here, then it goes to the blog page like that. Let's add CSS. Let's add some CSS to it. So to add some CSS, you remember what we got to do? We got to create a folder in here called static. And inside this folder as well, we can go ahead and create the blog. And now I can create a CSS. I keep saying that all of these are not too necessary. Like you can put them directly in static, and oh, that's possible because depends on how you're going to name it. But then this is what I have been doing. Oh, okay, sorry. We need to create, say, index the let me call it styles.css. Right. And I have already written some CSS for it. So let me grab that CSS for us. Okay. Now we need to use this CSS in our HTML. Who remembers how we can add CSS to the HTML? Unmute yourself and tell me. I mean, try refreshing what we've done so far. How can we add our CSS to this particular HTML file? Yes. Yes, yes.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm listening. Sorry.
Yeah, we need to load static and use it to link the CSS
All
to
right.
this page.
Thank you very much. So the first thing is to use the load tag, and we are loading static. This is how we do that. Then inside our head, we are going to link. What are we linking to? That's using the static tag, and that goes to blog/css. slash styles dot css. Okay, save this and refresh our page. Hopefully it is working. Oh, it's not working? CSS will disgrace you. Why is it not working? Oh, I didn't close static. Sure. That's one thing that I personally do not like about CSS. Still not working. If something about CSS is not working, it wouldn't even shout a thing. Like all the other programming languages would be jumping at you. That's why now they make arguments. Solomon, where are you, Kobe? I saw you talk about HTML is not a programming language. So one of those things, HTML and CSS will never shout at you. Every other programming language, hey, it will start shouting. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. But now it is bad because I don't know what the problem is. Let's see. This is right. I hope we are in the right directory. We've loaded load static. I hope they are in the right directory. Styles.css. Blog archive. What is happening? So let me try the same thing in post. So I know why something is happening and why not. So we're loading static. Okay. Then inside head. Oh,
Hello, Doc.
yeah. Yes, sorry, I'm listening.
Is this it in the terminal block CSS local page that is not found?
Oh, it's okay. So you add blog CSS styles. All right. So you let me try this one and we'll see. Static. Then we have blog slash CSS slash styles dot CSS. Then close this. Let's try to go to a different page. It's still not working. Not found. Log 12. Oh, okay. So for this, it is picking up the number. So it's not working, but the other one slash blog slash CSS my blog page. That's interesting. I guess let me check something where this is in the right place. So with our URLs, let's go to the main URL. Where do we have pages? Okay, blog slash that. Then when you come to the specific URL, oh my URL, where are you? URLs, okay. So this user blog. So what is wrong? Mm, Let me stop the server and run it again to see. This, I can't really pick it up right now. What is happening? Oh goodness. So it's working. Hmm. Yeah. So it's working. Some of these things are sometimes very frustrating, especially when they are not shouting at you. Okay. So at least now we have our CSS working. This has been entered. We've added them like statically, like we wrote them ourselves, right? But we want to render it dynamically. We are presuming that this information is probably coming from our database, and you should be able to render as many content as they are in the database should be rendered here. And if I click on one of these, it should take me to say the first one, and we should have all the details here. So that's what we're going to be working on. Let's start with the archive page. We're going to learn a few things. Let me quickly walk you through that. So I think the first thing I want to do is the for loop. For the for loop, it's just the same concept of for that you know in almost every, no, so let me not say that. It's the concept of for loops that you know in Python, where you can say, I give you a list, and you can use for loop to say for maybe item in this particular list. So say for X in this list, say my list, then you do something with that. That's the same thing that we are going to be able to do with for in here. So what we're going to have is in our view for the archive, let's go to views. This is where the archive is. We are going to make an assumption like here, ideally would have gotten, so get all the blog posts from the database, and we'll put them in a list. So maybe put them in a list. Then we are going to pass that list as context for this particular page, so that within the template, we can now look for, we use the for construct to render every one of them the way that we want. Okay, so I already created something for the blog post. Let me try and grab it. Blog post, where is it? Okay, let's see here. So we have a list called blog posts like this. And let me show you what is happening here. So this is just a list. I've called it blog posts, right? And the list is made up of, is a list of dictionaries. A list of dictionaries. The first item in this list is this, and it has one, the ID of the blog post. So I'm assuming that you are getting all this data from the database, and pretty soon when we learn about models, you see how to get it from the database. But we have the ID, we have the title of the blog post, we have the author, we had the content, and we have the date. So those are the things that we have, and it's the same for all three blog posts. So now we need to add a context, and remember that the context needs to be a dictionary. Currently, this is a a list. So we need to turn it into a dictionary, or we pass it as a value to something else. So I can go ahead and say blog post, uh, blog post, then this will be equal to this actual blog post that we have here. Sorry. I don't know if this sounds confusing, but all that is happening here is this is now like the key. The key here is blog post, and the value is this list. All that is happening is, remember, we need the context to be a dictionary. So even though I have this list, it's like this, me saying context is equal to, then I'm creating a dictionary. And in this dictionary, I'm passing a key called blog post. You can call it anything, say list of posts. then the value is actually this list that we have up there called blog post. This list here called blog post. Then I can go ahead and pass the context to this one. It is that simple. So all you want is to make sure that your context is in the form of a dictionary. But then every other thing, the key should be a string. The value can be any type of data. So here we have it as a list. And now we have access to this list inside this particular index.html. So let's go there. Index.html. I hope you remember the key. The key here is list of posts. Index.html, where are you? Index.html. Okay. So now we originally had all of this, right? And they are almost the same thing. We can delete one of them. We are going to render it dynamically. So we can delete one of them. And here, inside here, what we are going to do is say, we can even decide to do it within this. We are going to use a for loop in here. And how we do that is with the tag, the for loop tag, say for that in that. So this is what it looks like. For what? Remember that by passing the context here, we have access to this list of posts. This variable here, we have access to it in here. So we are going to say for post in list of posts, what do we want to do? We want to do something to it. Then after we've done all of that, we're going to end that for loop. And we end it by saying end for. Please, the classroom seems so quiet. I don't know if you guys are confused about anything. Let me pause here and get your feedback. Are you confused about anything? Is it too much?
Doc, I think you should just go on.
So one person said I should go on. I didn't hear the other person.
I have a question.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, so it means that the context in this place is like we're using it because we have not yet started using the database.
Yep. So it depends on what you mean by that. You mean this particular list that I created or
Yes,
the specific
that list
context?
that you created, and
Yeah,
then
the list
we
I
use
created,
the context
yes.
to look through it and display.
Yes. So ideally, you would have gotten this data from a database, but we are yet to talk about databases. So this is a perfect example for us. And it could also have been, if you are not using a database, we could have used, say, an API endpoint. We hit that endpoint and get some JSON data back. We pass it as a list in here and we use it. So that would involve some bit of serialization to be able to get around it. All right. Thank you, Kobe, and thank you, Enoch. God bless you. Yeah. Anyway, so I believe we can go on then. Let's go back to our index. Here we say end for. Okay, so this was the start of our for. But remember the attributes in there. For this one, we have ID, we have title, we have author, we have content, we have dates. So all those things, we can use them here. Remember, those ones can be used here because we have each post. It says for post in list of posts. So each of them can be accessed through this post. So here I'm going to have for this first block, that will be the title. Papa. Okay, Papa, thank you. Glad to hear that you're focusing. Okay, so let's see. I've even lost my chain of thoughts. Yeah. Well, title. Okay. So we have a variable known as posts, and we want to access the title of the post. You remember how we use variables in Django templating language, the two curly braces together with this will give us variable, like it will display the value of the variable. But here, this post that we are picking is picking from the views. It says for each of them. So if it picks the first one, we want access to the title, the ID, all of that. I think the best way is not this differences between JavaScript and Python usually confuses me, but I think the best way to do it will be to use the square brackets. Hopefully it doesn't cry on me. If it does, then I'll try the dot notation. Okay, so let's try running this to see if we are on track. Okay, it's giving me error. Let's try the dot notation. This thing usually confuses me, but hey. Okay, so now you can see that we've rendered first blog post, second blog post, third blog post. These other ones are the same because we've not rendered them. All that we've done is the blog title, just the title. And you can see that from the views, the title was first blog post, second blog post. If you want to be sure that that is where it is coming from, I can change these ones to these and we see it for ourselves. Save this and refresh this. You see that that is exactly where they are coming from, but we haven't changed the rest of the content. So for the rest of the content, we need to go change them by doing, so for the author, you say posted by John Doe. So we want to change it to post.author on the date. So we want to change this date as well to post.date, right? Then this is the content. So for the content itself, we want to change it to post.content. And now we are able to render everything dynamically. So you see this was posted by Ehoneah on January 2nd, this on January 4th, this on January 6th. And every one of them has its own content. This is the second blog post, this is the first blog post. All right, so that is how we render this dynamically. And with the help of the the for tag that we have used here. Another tag that we can use is the if tag. And I want to illustrate the if tag together with the filters. So for any of these constructs that you have, even for your variables, so whether you're using a tag or you're using a variable, you can introduce what we call as a filter. And a filter is something that would be, in this, I ever heard someone say in this TikTok, what's the name? TikTokification era or Instagramification era, something like that. Very funny. But in this era of filters, Snapchat filters and TikTok filters and all of that, you should all know what filters are used for. You are putting a filter on something, right? So in Django, if I have, say, this variable called name, you know that this is variable, but what if I want to make sure that this name is actually rendered all caps? Like it should be rendered in caps only. Let's try something. I think I know how to do that. So we have post title, and currently the case is just as we gave it. But what if we want everything to be all caps? We introduce the concept of filters. And a filter is created just by using the pipe symbol and the name of the filter. So here, if I want to use the filter upper, that will convert it to uppercase. And let's refresh this. You can see that all of this has been converted to upper cases. And that is because of this particular filter, upper. There are a lot of filters that I do not know all of them. There are only a few ones that I've learned about. And as you build and go on, maybe there's a particular thing you're looking for, you can always look at, oh, is there a filter for this? And you look at it. Okay, but for now, just know that these are possible ways that we can handle them. So maybe not the title per se, but maybe the author, you want to make sure that the author's name, and I think there shouldn't be a space between them. The author's, oh, why did I write filter? The author's name, you want it to be uppercase, you can do that. Okay, so now you see that the author's name is uppercase. All right, so that is one of the ways that we can use filter. Another way that we can use filter, I mean, there are several things that we can do with it, but on this blog archive, what if, you see, I intentionally wrote this as a bit longer, whilst these are shorter, and they are supposed to be summaries. So what if I'm interested in just up to somewhere here, maybe just 50 characters and nothing more? So there is also a filter that we can use. In fact, there are a couple of other filters that I came across. Maybe I should mention one or two of them. So we've talked about the upper filter. There is also the length filter. If you want to know the length of a string or a list, you can use the length. So for instance, if you were interested in the total number of blog posts from this list, we could probably have used it. That's the length, and it will give us the value. The other thing is, okay, so there is truncate. You can use truncate as well. Truncate, right? There's truncate, and I came across, so yes, slice. We can use slice. Slice is a common concept in programming. Python, yeah, you can use slice as well. So at least these are some basic filters that you can use. But for now, let's try slice. Let's use slice to move this thing so that it should show just the first 50 characters and dot, dot, dot after them. And no, doesn't have to show all the plenty things. Imagine if the blog post was very long. In this archive page, you just want to show some small bits. Okay. So how are we going to achieve that? We can use an if construct with that, the if tag, to check for the length, because here we are rendering everything. So what we want to do is we want to check the content. If the content is, the length of the content is greater than 50, then we want to either truncate it or slice it and use just the first 50 characters. I hope that makes sense. If the content here is longer, so how are we going to achieve that? So I think there is a way to comment in Django. If I am not mistaken, I think it's this way. So comments goes here. Comments goes here. So that's one of the things that you may have to learn. Okay, but for now, we are not bothering ourselves. We are going to write an if statement here. We say, if, what are we interested in? We are interested in the length of our content. So post.content, then we are passing the length filter. Length filter, if it is greater than 50, if this is greater than 50, what do we want to do? We want to, so let me use the basic comments. We'll read it out. So, sorry guys, if it is greater than 50, truncate, or let's say slice the first 50 characters, right? Then we can talk about an else statement. So if it is not, that is the else. Else, what should we do? If it is not, then we go ahead and post the whole thing, right? These are just basic programming stuff that you have done in the past if you've already programmed before. The same, oh, right. I don't believe this is any strange thing that you've not met before. And we end our if statements. So maybe we want all of this to go in a bit further. Say, sorry. We are going to end our if by saying end if, like that. Okay. So how do we implement this part? Remember, we're already using the length filter, but we want to use the slice filter here. And how we're going to do that is a variable that we are accessing. So post dot content. Remember, when I was using the variable within the if tag, I didn't have to use the double curly braces. I just had to quote it like that. But if you're using it outside of that, anywhere in your HTML, then you need to use your double curly braces. So now we want to slice. For slicing, you have to tell it from where are you slicing to where. Okay. So we have to pass, technically you call it an argument. You have to pass arguments to the filter. So filters can take arguments. Filters can take arguments. For the slice, the argument is going to be, so you do your column, then you pass it in quotation marks. So here we are going to say column, then the argument, we want the first 50 characters, so we can do column 50. If you don't remember slice, then you want to go and revise it, okay? Yeah, so I believe this should work. And we should have put this, okay, so this is what we do. Instead of having the P in there, we'll have the P outside so that it renders everything within a paragraph elements, okay? So in this paragraph, what we are doing is we are checking if the content length is greater than 50. And then if it actually is, we are slicing the first 50 characters. That's what we want to show. Otherwise, we want to show everything. Let's save this and see if it worked. And maybe here we'll add the dot dot dots for us. Save this and see if it worked. And as you can see here, we have the first 50 characters with a dot, dot, dot. Originally, it was showing longer than this, but now that has been implemented. So we have covered most of the things I wanted us to cover, but quickly, let me go to Google and show you where you can get more information about these constructs, Django templating languages. So in the Django docs, there are a lot of information here, but now that you know you have some knowledge on it, it will be easier for you to consume some of this content. Now you know what extends means. You know what blog does. You know all of these things we've talked about them, the for and end4, end blog, we've talked about all of these. So you can come here and look at the filters, some of the filters. So we have a default filter, we have the length filter, file size formats, all of these. For tags, we've talked about the for tag, if tag. So you can have an else if as well, elif, the syntax, the same way you use it in Python. Then we have X and if, and yep, comments. So I mentioned comments even though we didn't use them. Yeah, but this is how you comment things out in Django templates language. Template inheritance. So we've talked about template inheritance as well. And yeah, so almost everything here we've talked about them. But the most important thing is for you to use it and experience it. In fact, there's one last thing that I want to do. Be able to click this and go to that page. I think that would be interesting. So let's finish that up so that in your assignment, you can go and build a whole complete website with a blog feature. So let's end with that. Right, we have this one that is declaring. Let's go to the URLs that we created here. So there is a URL that if you pass the ID to it, that URL is called blog post. Okay. And it carries the URL, the parameter ID. So if we come in here where we are rendering it, you can use the URL tag here. Let's use a URL tag, URL, and see, we are accessing the blog post URL. But what you need to know is that that blog post URL is expecting an ID, the article ID here. Okay, so we need to pass an ID to it. And here, remember that we already have an ID from, what is it, post. Inside the post, we have post.id. So we can add that here and say post.id. And I think this is where it wouldn't work. We may have to do this for it to work. All right, let's try it and see. Refresh this. Oh no, from post ID could not pass this. Okay. Will it work with the post.id? Is something. Okay. I may have to, sorry. I think in the first place, this has to be like this. Then let me see if this will work. Okay. Yeah, so this is working. This is working. And as you can see, when I hover on it, down here, you see the URL. This is now at 127.0.0.1.8000, then /blog/1. This is /2. This is /3. But if I click on it, it takes me to the generic one because we haven't handled the data that is coming in. So we have to go and update that page to probably handle that as well. Let's see how we can do that. If you come in posts here, so we want this to be able to handle the data that is coming in from the view. So inside our view for posts, inside this view, we may have to equally add this, right? We have to add this as context in here. But here, please pay attention. In Django, one key thing, and the reason why I'm even interested in showing you this here is that almost all the logic, I've explained this before, the logic happens within the views. So all the logic, the checking that you have to done, almost all of them happen in the view. When you go to the template, that sort of loop that we're doing with the if statement that we're doing, those are not like logical reasoning per se, but in terms of how we are presenting the data. So the presentation layer, as for that, it's fine. But every logic that we want to render should be done within the views. That's where the logic happens. So let's see what I mean by that. Now, remember that the URL that we are heading to is something /1. This one should be taken as the ID, right? Is the ID. But when we were naming our URLs, here, where is it? Here, this ID that is coming, we named it article_ID. That is what we called it. It means that if you come into the views, this value, you want to know, like if the person has come here, the first thing you want to know is what is the article ID that they've come in with. Or if you're building a robust application, you may want to use what we call a slug. So you can have, say, a slug here, and you want to gather that slug, pick the value here. So technically, we call these parameters. We call it the URL parameter. So the URL parameter here for the article ID is 1. Then you go and check against the database and grab the post with ID 1 before you come and display it. That is exactly what we are supposed to do. But in our case right now, we do not have a database attached, except that we still have some data in here that we can render. So the first thing that we want to do this time around, we are not going to send all of this data to the template. It doesn't make sense. The person is trying to access a particular page, a particular blog post. That's what they are interested in. So they've gone to the blog post with ID 1. That is the only one they are interested in. So that's the only one we should send as context to our page. But how do we check that? So that's where we have to implement some sort of logic that checks if this article ID is equal to the ID of this, any particular one of these, then we render it. Guys, does that make sense? So this article ID that you are seeing is what the person will have as the URL parameter here. So now that I am on 1, what it means is that in here, I'm getting 1. So I would have to pick just this data here and send that to the HTML template and leave out the rest. So that is the logic we need to implement. If you write any sort of Python code, this can be very easy. All we need to do is maybe use a for loop and say for posts in blog posts, what are we checking for? We are checking if the article ID is equal to this ID here. So I can go on and say if article ID is equal to post dot ID, right? Oh, okay. So it is in Python here that's, oh God, that wouldn't have worked. Okay. So this is how I need to access the dictionary, the list item in this dictionary. Okay, yeah. So using the square bracket notation. Okay. So all I'm checking here is that this article ID, which is the URL parameter the person has input, compare that to the blog post here. If we have a match between the article ID and the ID, so this is like me going into the database and checking if my article ID matches any of the IDs in the database. And if it does, I want to set maybe, let's say, okay, so I want to set a variable called selected post to be equal to this particular post that I have. Guys, does this make sense? All that I've done here is that I'm checking for items within this particular list. And I'm saying for post in blog post, if article ID, that is the URL parameter the person has provided, if it is equal to the ID here, then select this and say the selected post is equal to post. I hope that makes sense. The other thing we can do right now is what if the person, so guys, okay, before we get there, let's simply go ahead and do this. So now we are selecting post, right? Selected post is equal to this, and that is a dictionary. Once it is a dictionary, we can go ahead and pass it to our contest by passing selected post. I hope it makes sense. I know it's a lot of things and you may be tired by now, but let's follow suit and finish up shortly. So all that I've done is I'm comparing this to all the data here and selecting one particular one that's the ID matches up with, and I'm calling it selected post. And now since post itself is a dictionary, it means we can pass it as a contest. So we can go on to that. And if we do that, we come into contest, we have access to that particular selected post. And for each of them, we can access the title, we can access the author, the date, the content. So if we come in here, instead of this blog post title, we can use the variable and say title. And we'll have access to that title in that dictionary. If it is the author, we can say then we say author here. If it is a date, we can say on the date here. Then for the content, we can easily put this as content here. Okay, let's refresh this and see what we get. I hope there are no errors. So now you can see that the blog post title has been updated. We have first blog post, then posted by Ehoneah on this, and this is the content. If I change this to 2, you see that it has changed to second blog post by this person, and this is the summary. If I change it to 3, perfect. Everything is working the way we want it to work, right? We didn't change this. We can't change it. Yeah, okay, where is that? Okay, so here, let's change it to title. And when you refresh this, yes, now you can see that it has changed. If I go to 1, sorry, so it went to 12, and great. So we do not have post with ID 12, and it's giving us this errors. You do not want your users to get into error. So what you want to do is, if the post they are looking for does not exist, then you want to show them a 404 error, right? That is the basic thing that we know. 404 cannot be found error. So let's go back to our logic. And that's why the logic part is important, and everything happens in the view. So here we selected post, but what if selected post is equal to none? So the one thing we can do is, even before we check, we can set selected post to none, so that if it doesn't, none in Python. Okay, good. So that if it doesn't get anything, selected post will be none. And we now check, after everything, we are going to check if selected post is equal to none. What do we want to do? If selected post is equal to none, we can, it's equal to none. We can render, so this, maybe here we can break out as soon as we find it, so that we don't have to go through the rest, right? And here we can render, for now, let me put sparse, let this error go away. But we want to render 404 error. So we need to import that from Django.http. So there is something called the HTTP 404. Yeah, HTTP 404. So we can use this, right? And here, if it is equal to none, we want to return HTTP 404. Okay. So something like this. All that we have done right now is, if you did not select anything, or sorry, if the ID you selected is not within the data that we have, then we are showing you a 404 error page. Okay, let's refresh this and see. Sorry, has no attributes get. Where is it? Hold on, let's see. Has no attributes get. Sorry, let's see. Let's try this and see whether this error goes away. Oh man, has no attribute get. Has no attribute get. Where is that one coming from? Did we specify the? Okay. Mm. This is interesting. Has no attribute get. Oh. Okay. Yeah, I know why. So it is an error. So we are not returning it. We are raising that error. Sorry. So we should raise the error, and yeah. So this is what it looks like for now on Django, until we implement our own 404 page that will render it. But once it is not found, this is what we are interested in. Say no post found. That is coming from this information. So say no blog post found. If we refresh it, you see that this changes to no blog post found. Yep. So guys, One thing that I wouldn't do right now, but I will assign it to you as part of your assignment, is to connect this blog thing with the home, the pages. Like have it on that particular list so that I can go back to, like here that I'm on the blog archive, I should be able to go back to home. And when I'm on home, I should be able to go to blog as well. Now we have a fully functional website, but without a database backing it. All the data, even though we have a back end to it, we don't have a database. So we have manually put our data in there. Your assignment is to go replicate this whole thing, have a fully functional website. And that's why I told you earlier to work on the assignment for last week. If you have the assignment for last week, just go ahead and make the changes, the necessary changes to it. Then you have these other things to add on. Make it dynamic for me to be able to click on any of these. Yeah. And think any questions? Let me take your questions before we end the stream. I'm very exhausted right now. Any questions? So I can see some of you are watching on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, know that this is a live Zoom session that we're having. I pinned the link so you could join, but then feel free to join the WhatsApp group as well. Let me drop the link to WhatsApp group. Those on Zoom. If you have any questions, please go ahead and ask before. I hope you guys are not asleep already because I know even in Ghana, it's almost 10 p.m. in Ghana, GMT. That means that those in, what was the time at your end? And was Tracy here? Those in Eastern Africa as well. I'm guessing some of you are asleep already. Anyway, yeah, so
Oh,
It's 1 a.m. Doc here.
it's what?
You can
1 a.m.
You can continue 1 hour crowd. We are here.
Yeah. Myself, I'm very tired right now. I don't think I'll
Oh,
be
but
able to
you've done well. You've done well. Hey, from
Thank you.
7, I didn't even come early, but I'm tired, bro. You've done
Yeah.
well. You've done well. Charlie, you go over and beyond, though. Since, but I'm not on the WhatsApp group for some reason.
Oh, okay.
I've gone off.
I
So
see.
drop the link and let me see. At a point, I said I'll
Oh.
contact you and ask that. Oh, why are your patients taking you away?
No, I'm here. I'm very much alive.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm very much alive.
wait, is our forex guy around?
Hey, can you hear
The
me?
guy you brought that helped us with the forex.
Yeah, Isaac, it's been a long while since I heard from him.
No, I'm
Sorry.
here. I'm very much alive.
Hi. So Julius, there's
I'm very
another.
much alive.
Is our forex guy around?
Yes,
The
yes.
guy you brought that helped us with the forex.
Yeah, Isaac, it's been a long while since I heard from him.
No, so
So I'm very much alive.
okay, yeah. Sorry, I think Anna Julius wanted to talk, but then his network, sorry, there was feedback from his end. I'm trying to type, guys, hold on. I'm losing concentration right now, I guess because I'm tired. SWM. Yeah. So those of you on YouTube, I've dropped the link there that you can join the WhatsApp group. I keep saying that I'm not really a fan of WhatsApp groups because everything that we've posted, you will not have access to it. That's one big what is it? Oh, Julia says I'm watching from US. That's great. Happy to hear that. Then yeah, as I was saying, WhatsApp, I'm not a big fan of WhatsApp because everything that we've posted there before you won't get to see it. So I'm still thinking which platform. I'm trying to use the Telegram channel because I don't want, I have so many groups, I have so many things, And sometimes I have to pick a link and go and share, and I forget some of them. So I want to consolidate everything in one group. And yeah, I just hope that you guys will be fine with that. For now, you can join the WhatsApp group, and maybe later still thinking about how to execute this better, but I'm trying to use channels, a WhatsApp channel and the Telegram channel for communicating. So if you are not subscribed to those channels, please try and do WhatsApp channel. If you're in the WhatsApp group, hey, just send me a message. I'll send you a link for you to join the channels in terms of the Telegram channel and the WhatsApp channel, so that when I'm about to do any session, I post it and you are aware.
Can
I'm
you
also
hear me now?
doing, yeah, sorry, who is that?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry, man.
Yeah, Julius.
I'm watching from US, man. This is awesome, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Which part of the US are you?
I'm in I'll say mountain side, almost to the western side of US.
Oh, okay. So what's the time right now at the end?
Right now is 3 p.m.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that makes sense. All right.
Yeah. Thank you for this. I was watching on live. I didn't know there was a YouTube. I assume I was watching on YouTube and it was clear.
Okay.
I enjoyed. So thank you so much for this.
Yeah, you're welcome. So this is like the fourth lesson, I believe. Yeah, I think this is the fourth session we've had, and all of them are online. I'll soon add this to the playlist, so you can easily check the playlist out to go through the ones that we've done. But the next session we'll be talking about models and delve into database. Once we've connected the database to our application, that's like the backbone of Django has been done. And now all the other things that we're going to do are like add-ons and also applying your Python knowledge to do some other stuff, or even tinkering around with Django itself. So Django allows you to change a lot of things to suit your need. So those are the things that we'll look at subsequently. And for those of you who are new to this, so I'm trying to build a community. I mean, I have a lot of communities already, but the goal this year is that I want to be able to help I have a huge target anyway, and I hope you all help me do it. My goal that I set for the beginning of the year is to help about 10,000 people this year. And we are going to learn almost everything that I am learning. Once you are interested, hey, be my guest and let's go. So I did a poll and it turned out that people wanted to learn Django more. So we started with Django, but then we have React.js under the list. We have Nest.js. We have what else? TypeScript. We had Node.js Express. So all of those technologies we are going to explore subsequently, but now we are focused on Django. So help me invite as many people as would benefit from these sessions. Let them join the community and help me achieve my dream of helping 10,000 people. I'm not asking for anything in return. Like, I'm just doing this for free. But yeah, that is my passion. I want to be able to teach. I want to get better at it. And I know that you are going to help me do that and achieve that goal. Thank you all for joining. Let me read the chat. Please, Doc, when may I have the one-on-one talk with you? Hi, Abednego. One-on-one. Okay. Unable to join the group using this link, SWM invites. Did I enter the wrong link? Why is that so?
It's not working. No.
The link is not working.
I'm unable to join. It keeps saying fail to. Fail.
When your best slash SWM.
I don't know if I can show you a picture. Is it possible to attach it?
Okay. So don't worry. I'm sending a
I should
link.
give you my number.
Wait,
And
I'm
then you
sending
add
a
me.
link. This one is not for public consumption, but for those of you who are here, I'll risk it and send you a link on Zoom. Reach out to me through that link. I believe that should work. Okay. So those of you on Zoom, please reach out to me on WhatsApp and I'll add you to the group. I don't know why it doesn't soon work because it's working on my end. All right. Any questions, guys, before we end the stream?
So, Dr. Opet, is
Yeah.
that your name?
Yeah.
So is this a kind of a predictable on?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay, so randomly, whenever you have time, is when you.
Exactly. Yeah. So I wish I had that fixed schedule that we can go because it will force me to deliver, right? I think for now, even the thing that is really forcing me to deliver is me seeing people in the group asking, when next are we having a session? And I have to make sure that, hey, don't slack, do something, right? So I really wish that I had that schedule planned out, but unfortunately, my personal schedule is like that. Like so many things going on in my life right now and I can't just predict when. But yeah, as we go on, I announce in the groups and the channels when we are going to have a session. Right now, the next free time I'm thinking of because I'm concurrently running an HTML CSS bootcamp, which I take around the same time. Mondays, Wednesdays, Saturdays, I do live sessions with them. So those days I'm not available. So the 3 days that I am possibly available are Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. So right now, the next available time is likely to be Sunday afternoon. So we can peg it for Sunday. If it doesn't come on, then we are going to do Tuesday. But hopefully we get to meet this coming Sunday, same time in the same time 2 p.m. my time, that's like 7 p.m. GMT. So hopefully Sunday we'll start looking into models and how we can attach a database to this project.
Doctor, please, I want to ask for a request.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, see, some of us don't really know how to code in the HTML and then CSS. So you wrote some base code for the HTML and CSS. I don't know if you can share with us so that we can actually use that one in our assignment.
No problem.
Right.
So what I'll do is I would push all the code to GitHub and push the HTML and CSS separately as well to GitHub so that you can have access to that. That is totally fine.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. But you should take my HTML and CSS bootcamp if you don't already know HTML and CSS. Sorry. Yeah. But
I'm taking it one at a time. So
it's fine. It's fine. I'm just teasing. All right. It's not currently open for accepting new people. We're already, I think, 2 weeks into it. We are ending next week. But it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So
You're
you will
welcome.
let us know when you are open for a new batch.
Sure. Once you're in the community, you gain all the benefits there is. All right.
Yeah, I can't get into that. Maybe you can send me.
So check the chat. Check the chat. I've dropped a new link.
Chat and it want me to click. When I click, it doesn't take me to
There's
that.
the specific link that I added not long ago. Is that it?
The one with OE.
Hey, wait. Wait. I am on YouTube right now. Please, you don't say my
okay, so
my WhatsApp number.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So let me confirm. So all I'm trying to do for you right now is for you to get access to me, at least on WhatsApp, and I'll be able to add you. If that is not working, you can send me an email. I'll send you my WhatsApp number. Okay, anyway, so it doesn't make sense. Since I've given you the link, let me add my WhatsApp number in case you want that instead. Okay. So yeah, this is my WhatsApp number. Okay, Abednego says it's working at his end. And please pardon me if you send me a WhatsApp message and I am yet to respond and it's past, oh, yeah. If it is past like 2 days and I've not responded, please resend the message. Sometimes there are a lot of messages and I struggle to respond to all of them. And I hope you all understand. If you resend it and I see it, because mostly I answer the most recent ones which are relevant. So you can resend it if I haven't responded to it. Anyway, let me not keep you any longer. I really appreciate spending your Thursday night with me. And I know tomorrow is another day. Tomorrow is going to be a good day. Some of you are already in tomorrow and you're still here with me. Thank you so much for spending the time. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you, God willing, Sunday for us to do the next session. But make sure that you do your assignment. Assignment here is everything that we have done. But then in addition to it, connect it such that now when I'm here, I can go back easily to the home page or any of the pages that I want, something like that. Add that element to it. You can change the CSS to look anyhow you want. You can add your own content, make it neat. In fact, take it up as a whole project. You are building a website for a company and you are doing that with all their company stuff in there. If you want some CSS, you don't know how to write CSS, ask ChatGPT. It'll write some CSS for you, some HTML for you, and you are good. What is important is for you to understand the Django bit and how they all come together to give you this output. Thank you and see you next time. Let me stop the stream.
Hello, Doc.
Hi.
Please, I wanted to ask something. With the filters, I went through someone's code and then the person had used variable names for filters. Is that possible?
Has you used what?
Variables. Person has used a variable.
A variable
That is if if like I'm wrong, then it means that the pipe symbol can be used for something else except filters because it was actually a variable that was there, not a filter.
But what do you mean by a variable that was there, not a filter?
Okay, so let's say on line 15 of this code, for
Mhm.
instance, line 15. So
Line
we have the
15.
title there. And
Mhm.
instead, you see, when you want to add a filter, you use the pipe symbol.
Yeah.
So that is not where the pipe was. The pipe was after the variable, and then he had declared another variable there.
As in this. Is that what you're referring to?
Not really. After you close the variable, let's after the curly braces, after you've closed the curly
This
braces. Yes. No. Inside the outer one.
here.
Yes. And then there was another variable name there.
Then so something like what's the ID?
Yeah, something like an ID.
Uh I don't know about the syntax. I don't know.
Okay.
I think if you put outside that, it will not. You have to have inside the color braces. No, two color braces if you want to do piping.
Yeah. So
Yes,
I
they were
don't know
all
about
in
this
curly
particular syntax.
braces.
Anyway, I'll look into it, but then you can also share that specific code snippet with me and I'll take a look at it. But I don't know about that syntax.
Thank you very much. I'm sending it to you.
All right. Let me go and fix my Git issues and push the code. Yeah, so those of you on YouTube, thank you so much for being with us. Tyrone, I can see you. Thank you as well. Papa Moa, thank you. And yeah, everyone else. I appreciate